Alright, so I think we'll go ahead and do some cleaning. There are a lot of tricks and tools one can use for cleaning electromechanical antiques. One of my favorite things is an old toothbrush. Very useful. Q-tips for those tight spaces. Isopropyl rubbing alcohol. Cotton balls. And an old sock for a rag, which has been through the washer and dryer before it became a rag. So how are you all doing today? It's been quite the time for me lately. Come on, you. How are those gas prices sitting with you anyway? Gee whiz. Come on, you. Out of there. What the heck is it stuck for now? Oh, whoops. Probably come under the speaker. Something. I don't know. I feel like the gods are having a great old time with me lately. Yeah, this didn't happen before. Oh, it's that. There we go. Jeez. It's way harder than it should have been. So you probably remember we got our cord on. And now we gotta take this to make it all shiny. Super shiny and clean. While we're waiting on speaker and stuff. Classic rock has long been my friend for late night work. The Doors, Jimi Hendrix, all those guys. David Bowie. So what you can gently do is just start to go over where the biggest offenders are, dust-wise. Of course, being gentle as possible. These old things were built to last forever, as we know, but doesn't mean they're indestructible. Unlike those modern smartphones. Wow, I don't know, I've never had an iPhone, because I'm too poor, but Android, man, it just seems like you could drop them off a building and they would do fine. Which is great that not everything's built to break, right? Gives us a break. Light My Fire is just one of the best. Funeral fire. the night on fire. Okay, so let's take some rubbing alcohol and try to get some of this crap off there. Another really good thing for this kind of work is acetone, which is a bit noxious. That's why I try to use rubbing alcohol for impossible. See how quickly already that looks so much better? And rubbing alcohol evaporates too, which is just really great. There's your piece up. Riders on the storm. So here is a before of a 35 7Z GT tube. So from what I understand, your first number on your tube is your cathode operating voltage, heater, filament, whatever you call it. So if you remember before, we had the 7A8 tube. So that would mean that the operating voltage of this oscillator tube is 7 volts. You have a lot of 6 and 12 volt tubes. It's very common. 35 volts, interesting. The first commercially mass-produced tubes, the 01As, which I love to play with, ran on about 5 volts. Even though they're 01As, so the alphanumeric code, I guess, started later on. I'm not sure if the other letters and numbers have any significance. If they do, go ahead and tell me. Okay, so here's a perfect example of where you can use a Q-tip. See how there's grime in there? Not that this is really necessary, but since we're bored and oops, that'll evaporate. Poor table. You can go in those spaces with a Q-tip or toothbrush, or sometimes a really small, like a tatting needle or Irish lace needle can be very good too. I'll wipe that off. See how much better that is already? Let's go ahead and try. So yeah, if you know if there's any other significance to those codes, let me know in the comments below. I'm really curious. Wow, that's some, see how, I don't know if you can see that. All around there, I just rubbed that off the toothbrush. So much better. Yeah, when I was my late teens, like 18, early 20s, and I was working for what was then the American Museum of Radio, renamed the American Museum of Radio and Electricity, and now known as the Spark Museum. There was a back room at the time that was full of boxes of tubes. Vacuum tubes, electronic valves if you're in the UK. Nobody wanted to take that job on, sorting them. Thousands and thousands. Somebody said 10,000. I would not doubt it. A lot of them were boxed, some of them were unboxed. Tubes like this. A lot of television repair tubes. Let's see what this one is a 12 EA J4A. So that is a 12 volt tube. Interesting, I don't recall 12B. As I've gotten older, I've always prided myself on my memory. It's incredible, but there's just so much packed in there anymore that a lot of it slips away. But I started to say about the sorting tubes is I used to sort so many tubes for months and months that I just had tube labels imprinted in my brain. And even to this day, 18 years later, I still, 12AU6, 6S7, 01A, they're just kind of, I can see them in my mind, those alphanumeric codes for vacuum tubes, like on a billboard or something. I see that there's these cool numbers down here, so I'm going to be careful around those. Might have already taken a little bit of them off. It's alcohol. I don't want to take that off because it adds character. Yeah, so we had these tubes. It was from a gentleman who donated his collection. I want to say Al Jolson, but it's not quite right. He was from Southern California. He donated his collection to the museum. He had a vacuum tube museum. And he was the founder of the National Vacuum Tube Collectors Association, I believe. So he was getting older and he donated his collection to the Spark Museum of Electricity in Bellingham, Washington. And it was just one of those dirty jobs that nobody wanted to take on. And that time I hadn't had a lot of exposure to vacuum tubes, but my dad would talk about them because my grandfather, my Grandpa Fosh, passed away before I was born, worked for the Air Force as an electronics mechanical engineer, and he worked a lot with vacuum tubes, including on SAF Strategic Air Command bases that had those huge old radar machines, and I've actually visited one of the places where he worked down in Birch Bay. But so I remember my dad talking about tubes and stuff, but I didn't have a lot of familiarity with them. And I wanted to be useful, so I just started sorting this back room, which later was our repair shop moved back there, and because the museum had a long-standing policy that it would repair anything for $75 flat rate plus the cost of materials, most of which could be found in the museum's huge collection of parts. But before I went to art college, I was back there every 3, 4, 5 days a week sorting boxes of tubes into boxes so that they would be useful. And that was when I first fell in love with a useless technology. So the old hobbyist guys will know that the transistor started replacing the vacuum tube commercially in 1956. That was the cutoff year for vacuum tubes, more or less mainstream. So we know this set is pre-1956 because of how many tubes it has. 98% sure. Oh, that's looking so much better already. It's looking jacky. I think this will just make a difference when we start getting further into the actual repairs of it. I'm sure I'm still recording. I have a feeling that this transformer is going to have to go. Like I said, I think there was water damage on this set at one point. What else can I blab about? Been watching a lot of commentary channels lately on YouTube. That's kind of my thing, because I don't spend as much time on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter anymore, and I'm just on YouTube watching true crime and WrestleBrand and Look Mom No Computer and Mr. Carlson's Lab, which has been a huge inspiration for what I'm doing. And I have to say, I've never enjoyed talking heads on the news or anything so much, but I like listening to them on the radio, and I am liking listening the format with somebody talking in front of a screen, like on YouTube, about ideas and current issues, but putting a lot of humor into it. So I can take the cotton ball to this dial cover, alcohol, and that will help. This has probably never been done to this set before in all the years it's been around. This makes such a difference if you have a clean working surface. In landscaping handyman work company that I have, that was Sun Company, drives me crazy when I go to houses and I have to work in sometimes literal shit and piss, because people have little animals that aren't house trained and stuff. God love them, but ever since I was a kid, I've just always liked to have a clean work surface. Now, sometimes you don't have the time for all that. So you can see how much I'm getting off of there already. Wow, this is a long version of the end, isn't it? Wonder if this is the version that has that really cringy part of words you're not allowed to say on YouTube, but we'll see, won't we? I can tell he's like leading up to that part. Sorry about that. Even that part makes me even uncomfortable, and I have no standards anymore. But at the same time, I'm glad he did it, because that was that time period, you know, they were acid rock, they were just experimenting, and almost like stream of consciousness or automatic writing, and I just feel like they were more pushing the limits of things to experiment and kind of break things loose. It's like kind of like Brian Eno's oblique strategies or something. So that's looking a lot better, I'd say. Already. Don't you think? You can see some shine in you. This is pretty cruddy. Can you believe I've never actually used contact cleaner? But I guess I will be. So I think that's probably a good stopping point for now. Don't know if that was educational in any way, but thanks for being here, and hope you got something out of this, and till we see you next time. Bye.